Hello, welcome to the second episode of Beyond the Box Score. I'm Treyvon Hastings. With me is my co-host, Joey Korzanowski. Late night episode. Schedules have been busy, but once again, we're going to hit some hopefully hard-hitting topics here shortly.
Yeah, it was a busy weekend last week. Definitely a lot to go over. It was an exciting week of NFL, actually. There definitely got a lot to talk about. Even college football, too. MLB with playoffs coming up. A lot going down, and excited to go over all of it.
100%, and we're going to start it off doing a Thursday night football recap. Ironically, the Thursday night game this week is on Seahawks Cardinals. Joey just said Kyler Murray threw a terrible interception. Not surprised, but Dolphins Bills last week. Bills won 31-21. Overall, some of the takeaways you were impressed with that Dolphins offense. And I mean, the other stuff's just stat related, but I'd like to hear you talk about the Dolphins offense and what you liked about it. And I'm probably going to be devil's advocate, but let's hear it.
Yeah, so the Dolphins, I have not been high on them. I wasn't high on them coming into the season. I've made it very clear that I think they will be picking number one overall next year, and I think they'll be picking a quarterback as well. But I know this is a divisional matchup, but this was honestly really the first time this year that they looked competitive and actually showed some fight. I mean, I know they kind of did against the Patriots in week two, but I mean, I thought this was going to be a blowout in Buffalo. I just with how bad the Dolphins' defense is, I thought the Bills were going to run all over them. But no, I thought their offense looked creative. I thought Mike McDaniel actually brought a pretty good game plan. I liked how they used Devon Achane. I've liked that in the past couple of years with this offense. They get him the football kind of in any way they can. That kind of how like Detroit uses Jahmyr Gibbs. But yeah, I was impressed with the Dolphins. I mean, I don't think it's going to lead to many wins this year, but yeah, they looked a lot better than I had thought.
I was impressed with their ability to match the Bills score for score every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And drives were long, they were sustained. They didn't ask Tua to do much. He was able to hit a couple big throws when he needed to, but the reality is, once again, they can't win in Buffalo. Their offense kind of died out in the fourth quarter, and that's going to happen in a Thursday night matchup where, according to Next Gen Stats, a combined 1.5 air yards per throw by both Josh Allen and Tua. So the Dolphins almost got the Bills to kind of play to their liking and how they play offensively, and it honestly kept the Dolphins in the game. It wasn't an awful game by their defense, but they can't stop the run, then they can't stop the deep pass at the end of the game to clinch it for the Bills. And in all seriousness, I think all of it falls around Mike McDaniel's inability to kind of take this team where the front office thought he would take them when they hired him. So you mentioned this fun fact in here: since McDaniel took over in 2022, Miami is 3-14 versus teams with records over 500, but 25-12 against teams with records 500 or worse. So I do think that's the case with a lot of teams, but it seems to hit the Dolphins a little bit harder, and they've also lost those 8 straight regular season games against teams with winning records. So they got to find a way to flip the script and win these games against top teams, because if they want to ever get into the playoffs, they got to beat winning teams.
Well, yeah, I think this year is a little different just because I don't think they're as talented this year as they have been in the past. But I mean, that's really kind of been the thing with Miami, right? Like I remember when Emmanuel Acho called Justin Herbert a social media quarterback because he has some fun highlights. That's kind of how you feel about the Dolphins, right? Like they play in Miami, they've got Tyreek Hill, like Tua's a big name, like Mike McDaniel's a fun guy. You know, when you're winning, he's great. Like, but when you're losing, it's and the weather gets cold, it doesn't really go down well. So yeah, I mean, I think this year it's a little bit different just because I don't think they're quite as talented, and obviously the injuries with Tua has completely derailed really any plans that they've had. He was out. I don't know exactly how many weeks last year, but it was a majority of the season. It's just hard to get anything going when you've got Skylar Thompson, your backup quarterback, playing the entire year. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know where Mike McDaniel's goes from here. I don't really even know if he's going to keep his job at the end of the year. But yeah, this Miami Dolphins team just feels like they have no identity.
That is correct, and I'm glad you mentioned no identity, because we're going to transition into your beloved Browns. We can talk about that big win against the Packers, some crucial mistakes Green Bay made as well that helped the Browns come away with a win. But they hung in there. They kept Green Bay to a whopping 10 points, which I didn't really expect. I know they had a quality defense, but you've been harping on it all off season, all summer, like in various group chats that we're in about, Browns have a top 10 defense, Browns have a top 10 defense. I'm like, I'm gonna go more like the league average, like 15th, 16th, but they've been proving your point so far through these first few weeks of the season.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I had said this going into 2024 as well. I had said, like, coming off that 2023 year where I don't want to say the defense carried, but you saw how good the defense was behind Jim Schwartz. And I had said going into 2024, if we get competent quarterback play, like they could win some games. Well, it turns out they had the worst quarterback play I've ever seen with my own two eyes. So that kind of threw all those plans away. But yeah, I mean, in this game, you saw they made things tough on Jordan Love. Honestly, this was kind of not the first time, but I thought that they really just threw a lot of fits at Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur. Like it looked like Matt LaFleur kind of got off of his game plan. Like it didn't look like the usual Packers offense that we're used to seeing. But yeah, I mean, the big thing is that the Packers weren't able to run the ball. I mean, this Browns run defense is absurd, and really a lot of that is the addition of Mason Graham. I think that was an excellent draft pick. I wasn't too excited about it at the time, but obviously it's paying dividends. And I had said for years that the Browns need a run stuffing D tackle, and that's what they got. So anytime you take away a team's run game and put it all on the quarterback, and a team like Green Bay that doesn't really have a solidified number one wide receiver, you're certainly going to increase your chances of winning. But I really thought Jordan Love really struggled. It was Trey. I talked to you about this before we started recording. It was the last play of the third quarter. The clock was ticking down. Third down. The Packers didn't need to snap the ball, and they did. And Jordan Love took a sack. So you start the fourth quarter, punting the ball away. I mean, I don't. The Browns didn't score on that drive, but still, I mean, the Packers could have drove down and maybe gotten some points. It was 10-0 at that point. So yeah, I mean, I thought the Packers got out coached.
And it's pretty rare that they get out coached because they have one of the best head coaches in the NFL,
Mm-hmm.
consistently winning 12, 13, 14 games in Matt LaFleur, but their offense was just shot. They couldn't run the ball, which is something they want to do through Josh Jacobs, and
Yeah.
it put them into some situations they aren't accustomed to. And one of those situations was trying to, of course, block that Browns defensive line that has been wreaking havoc so far throughout this season. But you also mentioned that this is a very unsustainable formula for winning for the Browns, and they need to find some sort of offensive identity, similarly to the Dolphins.
Yeah, in 2024, it's hard not to compare the 2 years, but in 2024, the defense would come on the field, get a three and out, and the Browns offense, Deshaun Watson or DTR, whoever it was, would do the same exact thing. They would go three and out. The defense would be back on the field in a minute and a half. It's impossible for your defense to carry you throughout the entire game. And honestly, I had felt like the Browns defense had carried them this game for 55 minutes, but you can't count on that every single week. You have to be able to move the football yourself. You have to be able to keep your defense off the field. And I think they did a better job of that in the second half. The defense wasn't on the field as much, but forcing big turnovers. Grant Delpit had the huge interception, which led to points. Uh, Even the special teams blocked field goal. I thought the Packers were going to win it there on the field goal. They got returned the kick to like the 35 or the 40, and I was like, yeah, that's it. But the special teams comes up and makes the kick. But yeah, it's a fun win. It's good to see as a fan. But yeah, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, and I had mentioned as well pre-recording that they have to find a way to incorporate some sort of, I think, QB run to help open up their run game to take pressure off their pass game because they have a lot of decent weapons. Do I think Jerry Judy is a wide receiver one? Frankly, I don't. But they
I don't either. I
have
agree with you.
yeah, they have two very high quality tight ends in my opinion. Though, like there's
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of teams that can say they have a guy of David Njoku's caliber tallied on to also having Harold Fannin Jr., the rookie from Bowling Green, who is an amazing athlete, and he is dangerous with the ball in his hands as well. So I think a lot of two tight end sets have been favorable for the Browns with the lack of skill in the receiver room. Outside of Judy, you have Cedric Tillman, and after that, it's kind of just hit or miss. And I actually don't mind. I don't really hate Cedric Tillman. I think he's got some potential, but whether it's start making a QB change, whether it's finding packages to use Dylan Gabriel in the run game, not so much Shador. But the only QBs the Browns have had rostered who could be that mobile are Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel. And I think trying to incorporate that might help be, create a sort of transition period into that next phase at quarterback, getting Dylan Gabriel in there and moving off of the old savvy veteran Joe Flacco.
Yeah, your point about identity. I think a big part of that has been Quinshon Judkins, who they did not have for training camp. They had him for rookie minicamp, not training camp. He missed week one. He played week two, and they played him right away. But I made a TikTok about this, but they took Quinshon Judkins with the purpose of him to be Nick Chubb's replacement, which I know is massive shoes to fill. But I've been impressed with what I've seen, especially late in the game against the Packers. He ripped off a couple of big runs. He's just such a physical downhill runner. When we were in the draft, I knew we had two picks in the second round after we traded back. I had said we got to get either Treyvon Henderson or Quinshon Judkins. I would have been happy with either of them, and we took Judkins, and I said this is perfect. This is exactly the scheme that Kevin Stefanski wants to run. And to your point, you mentioned the two tight ends. That's what Kevin Stefanski loves. That was back in the days when we had Austin Hooper and Harrison Bryant, back when we had Baker, and the offense was really at its peak. But that's what Kevin Stefanski likes to do. And Njoku and Fannin are both underrated blockers as well. You could use them in the run game. But to your point about a mobile quarterback, they weren't able to run the ball week one against the Bengals. And you saw Joe Flacco dumping it off to Dylan Sampson a lot, kind of using that as an extension of the run game. And it worked to an extent. But again, it's just not sustainable. So I think they're really establishing their identity behind Quinshon Judkins and the power run game. And that just opens up so much more for your offense. So I'll be excited to see how that translates this week in Detroit on the road. I know it's a much bigger, much tougher matchup going on the road against Detroit than hosting Green Bay. So yeah, I'll be excited to see how they kind of progress that each week and kind of how much they up Quinshon Judkins' workload.
I do think Judkins will have a bigger role in this offense, even in just the next few weeks. But you got to talk about your beloved Cleveland Browns. I'm going to get the opportunity to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles for finally throwing the football against the Los Angeles Rams. As you have stated here, they have the Rams number. That is proven. The Rams in their last 12 games won all 9. The other 3 losses were all to the Eagles. So they have this team's number. This game was a little bit more on the throwing the ball side of it. Those first 2 games, Saquon Barkley went completely nuclear. And this game, the Eagles got down 26-7, decided to just let it rip, pass the ball in the second half, and, well, great things happen when you throw the ball. I don't know if some sort of way an Eagles, executive gets to this video, but throw the ball. You have one of the probably top skill rooms in the entire league, probably number 1, and you're not throwing the football. You need to trust your quarterback, who, by the way, only has 2 interceptions in his last 316 attempts. I know people are going to say it's all checkdowns. It's just not, though. So, I mean, if you can fact check that for me, let me know. But Jalen Hurts has been playing great. Eagles have all the skill to just let the ball and, throw it. I mean, Saquon Barkley has only 194 yards this year on 58 carries. The run game has not gotten going. And I know that's not sustainable, that it's going to be this bad all year, but they need to start throwing the football to ease up some pressure on that run game.
So your first point about that we had talked about with the Eagles having the Rams number, but the Rams kind of do have the game plan to at least compete with the Eagles, because I feel like the Rams are the one team in the league that really anytime they play the Eagles, it's a close game. They're going to give the Eagles a run for their money. They're going to be in it for the whole game. You saw it in the playoff game. But yeah, first of all, me and you are probably two of the biggest Jalen Hurts agenda pushers out there. You're an Eagles fan. I just think Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. I think he is heavily underrated. I hate the discourse around him. I'm not somebody who really only targets QB wins as a stat, because I really don't think they are. But anytime you watch an Eagles game, Jalen Hurts makes the right play. Like, he doesn't necessarily turn it over as much as he used to. He uses his legs on third down or anytime he has to, and he utilizes his weapons. He's really good at throwing the deep ball. I think a lot of people are just kind of overlooking his development as a quarterback, and I think they're just kind of thinking about Jalen Hurts and where he was as a passer just a couple of years ago. And they assume he's still like that. Like, no, that's not the case. Like, that you don't win a Super Bowl if Jalen Hurts isn't doing everything he can to help you win.
Yeah, and there's been once again, a lot of discourse in the media world about the Eagles and their offense. Drew Brees got to go on ESPN, and he basically said the Eagles' offense is boring. Jeff Saturday works at ESPN and countered him and said, when we played the Saints in the Super Bowl when he was in Indianapolis, and he was calling Drew Brees check down Charlie because, well, Drew Brees, the last 5 years of his career, really last 3, he couldn't throw the ball deep. That's why Michael Thomas got called slant boy and everything else. So I think it's ironic Drew Brees is saying that. However, it's just more proof to the pudding that quarterbacks harp on, or at least would prefer to have a ton of passing yards and look have gaudy numbers and stuff, and not have the resume that Jalen Hurts has accumulated. I mean, if he keeps up this pace with all of his accolades, he is going to end up being, you know, knocking on that Hall of Fame door. I know that's going to shock people, but I mean, his resume is very similar to that of Russell Wilson right now, and Hurts is much younger, and Wilson might not get in the Hall of Fame, but guess what? Hurts might, because he also has all the rushing statistics. So um, it's a rare kind of breed of quarterback that we're witnessing. I've seen so many people on Twitter call him a black version of Tom Brady, which is to put, I mean, that puts it bluntly, but they play
Mm-hmm.
very, I mean, I don't know how one wouldn't realize that. And Jalen Hurts is really smart. Sirianni mentioned the second half, Patullo was still calling the plays, of course, but then he then countered and said, but Jalen's also really smart on the field. He's seeing things, he's checking out his stuff. He basically said Jalen Hurts checked out everything in the second half and just threw the ball. I mean, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
this is what it looked like. But he's one of the smartest QBs in the league, and he does all the little intangible things, and that's part of why the Eagles have become such a good team, because teams know they can't necessarily just win basing that off of Jalen Hurts' arm anymore. He can actually beat you throwing the football if he has to, and he just did last week.
It's kind of interesting that you brought up Tom Brady because as you were talking, I was literally sitting here thinking to myself that I was going to make that point. I know it's weird to compare the two because Tom Brady has accomplished so much, and they really are different styles of players. But what is the reason everybody thinks Tom Brady's a GOAT? Because he won, and he won by making the right play when he needed most. That's why we love Mahomes. He makes the right play when it's needed most. That's why I think Josh Allen and Lamar haven't gotten over the hump because they just don't make the right play when it matters most. Or maybe they do, but their team necessarily doesn't come through for them, aka Mark Andrews. But look, I understand Jalen Hurts has all world talent around him, but like that's good team building. I mean, it's more of a credit to the Eagles than it is a knock on Jalen Hurts. I mean, yeah, there's good talent around him, but who's got to get him the ball? Who's got to set everything up? Who's got to check in and out of plays like you mentioned? So yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, Jalen Hurts, he makes the right play, which is exactly what you want out of your quarterback. And me and you have talked before about the term game manager. I know that's kind of a negative connotation to that, but I think Jalen Hurts is the perfect example of a game manager, especially in that week one game against the Cowboys. The Cowboys kept it close, but every third down, a receiver wouldn't be open. Jalen Hurts is taking off, running with his legs, extending the drive. And to me, that is doing what you need to do to play winning football and to win. And like I know against the Chiefs, he only had 100 yards, but they dominated the clock, and that is largely in part to Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and when Tom Brady gets brought up, I think people confuse it. We're talking about the first like 6 years Tom Brady when he was in New England. They had a dominant defense. They had great coaching, and they had
Yeah,
the leg of a Terry. To be brutally
yeah,
honest, that's the Tom Brady we're thinking about. And if you compare them statistically, it's pretty similar. It's not identical, but it's pretty similar. And then you factor in Jalen Hurts' legs. It's a whole other weapon for the offense. So it's just it's all interesting, and people are going to harp on the tush push thing. Before the tush push was even a thing, the Eagles were converting QB sneaks at, I believe it was like a 92.6 or 93.8% rate, and now with the tush push it was like 92.6. So they're actually less
mm-hmm.
effective on the tush push than doing the old school Tom Brady quick QB sneak, which no one ever complained about, by the way. It was annoying to
Yeah,
watch, but no one complained about it. So little bit of irony. I think just generally in the American society, it's just agreed upon to hate the Eagles. I'm saying that as an Eagles
fair,
fan. In fact,
fair.
that is the reality. And you know what? The great teams get hated on. The ones that are in dynastic situations get hated on. I'm not saying the Eagles are a dynasty. However, if there's a team to make a run like that, now it would be the Eagles and the team building and the job Howie Roseman has done at the position of general manager. Best one in the league.
Well, and I think a lot of people really kind of came around to that idea in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. I think a lot of people overrated the Chiefs a little bit last year. What they did was incredible, and what Mahomes has done is incredible. But let's be real, they have not been the same since Tyreek Hill has left. The offense has not been the same. They just didn't have the same team last year as they had in past. And the Eagles were just so much farther advanced the Chiefs were. I mean, just the talent disparity was just so obvious. I mean, the Eagles defense, that was really the first time you had seen Mahomes in a big game just look flustered. It really looked like nothing was going for him. I think the Super Bowl was really when people kind of came around to just how good the Eagles are. And like you said, huge credit to Howie Roseman. The way he's built his team over the years has been absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, and the Eagles are a contender. Rams are a contender. We've got we had, I should say, in past tense, a contending team matchup as well last week. The Lions go into Baltimore, have a huge second half, and take down the Ravens. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because it was a weird game from the Ravens. We had another Derrick Henry fumble late. Lamar Jackson fumbled as well on a 4th and goal. They again had opportunities and blew it. So I want to hear your thoughts on this because the Lions' offense went wild.
Yeah, so I made it rather clear. The Ravens were my Super Bowl pick going into the year, and I'm still not really wavering from that. I still think that they have the team to get it done, but I do have my concerns about this defense. I mean, they gave up over 40 points in Week 1. The Week 2, played the Browns. It's the easiest matchup they could have gotten. But then this past week, I mean, the Lions ran all over them. I mean, they had two drives of over 95 yards that led to score drives. They were like 10 minutes each. I mean, the Lions just completely dominated in the trenches. David Montgomery, I thought he was going to be a non-factor in that game. I thought it was going to be a lot of Gibbs, a lot of Goff. But David Montgomery probably had his one of the best games that we've seen him play in recent memory. I was so impressed with David Montgomery, but and then they just played off of that. I mean, Goff didn't really turn it over. They played so good, but the Ravens led by 7 in the third quarter, and I had thought the Ravens were going to win. Honestly, I did. I was like, all right, the defense is going to lock in. Lamar and the offense is going to take over, and they never did. The only passing offense was really through Mark Andrews and some of the other tight ends, but yeah, Derrick Henry, that's now 2 clutch fumbles. And I'm not going to say that Derrick Henry is washed or anything because I know he's in his 30s and what he's doing is just so insane. So I don't think he's washed, but I do think it's a little bit of a mental thing here. I think that Bills' loss kind of is sticking with the Ravens. And maybe if they had played a better team than the Browns in Week 2 to get a win over, maybe it'd be a little different. But now 2 losses like this, this is a lot to overcome. I know it's early in the season, but yeah, these 2 losses sting if you're the Ravens.
And they play in one of the league's toughest divisions as well. The Browns play
Yeah,
them tough. Typically. I know they didn't week 2, but usually they play them tough. They had that crazy comeback with Watson a couple years ago as well. Um,
yeah.
Steelers, obviously, a very pristine rivalry. Don't even need to mention much more about that. And then the Bengals, not going to be as competitive without Joe Burrow. However, if he were to come back, play them, that's a whole other thing. So they play in a tough division as it is. They need to have these gimme games when they get those opportunities. And the Bills aren't a gimme game. The Lions aren't a gimme game. But when they're controlling the Bills game the way they did and lost, we've kind of mentioned this, and all of the media has, to be honest. Like that, a loss like that gut wrenching, even that early, can derail the rest of the season. So the Ravens have to find a way to get out of this turnover bug, and I think a lot of it just falls on John Harbaugh. I mean, he in his time in Baltimore, it's nearing almost 20 just double-digit blown leads at some point. So got to find a way to reel it in because their season's not looking the way a lot of people thought it would. They were very high praised pick for the Super Bowl, and it's just not looking like it right now. So, and in large part, it's because weirdly they probably have the most talented defensive secondary in the league, and their defense doesn't perform at any level of like standard at all. They're actually a terrible defense, which we don't think of that when we think about the Baltimore Ravens and their history. It's
Hmm.
always been a defensively driven identity, and that's the way they're going to play. But all those guys are gone, and in the last 2.5 years, their defense has been frankly horrific to watch. So they have the most talented secondary in the league and can't defend anybody. It doesn't really make sense. So I would agree. There's definitely some worry there for the Ravens. Um, but yeah, it's tough.
Well, the defense is mainly falling apart in the second half because and you think the Buffalo game, it was like 40-25 with like 11 minutes to go. And all of a sudden the Bills are winning the game. And then even this game, it was what 14-14 at halftime. They were up like 21-14 midway through the third quarter. That's when I thought the Ravens were going to get a stop and kind of pull away. And Lamar has played almost flawless. You mentioned that turnover on fourth and goal. I think it's his first turnover on the year. I mean, he had like 9 touchdowns, no picks through the first 2 games. Like he was playing about as good as you could possibly ask for him. I mean, but I don't want any of this to take away from what the Lions are doing because honestly, that was kind of more of my takeaway was just how impressive the Lions were. A lot of people counted them out at the beginning of the year. You know, it was for the two new coordinators and everything. And I personally think Jared Goff is limited. I think he does have a certain ceiling, and I thought Ben Johnson got him to that ceiling. So I don't know how much more he could possibly, or how much higher he could possibly go. But when you're running the ball like that, man, you only got to do so much. So I was awfully impressed with the Lions. I certainly makes me not scared, but certainly makes me a little bit nervous for this matchup for the Browns going to Detroit next week. I think it's gonna be tough. But yeah, best way I could put it is it was a true statement win by the Lions. Everybody contributed. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a great game. Everybody did their job. The Lions soared up my power rankings for me personally.
Yeah, the Lions, and the only other team I can think of in terms of the losing two coordinator thing was the Eagles coming off that previous Super Bowl appearance, lost both of their coordinators, and then they had a down season following that. So we don't see that happen often. We lose both coordinators in the same year. The Lions are in that
Mm-hmm.
position. They've been able to handle it so far, I think. That first game against the Packers looked alarming, but I think that said more about the Packers, to be honest, at this point. And yeah, this
Mm-hmm.
game all about the Lions, who happen to be playing, as you mentioned, at the Browns this week. Um, and you have a lot of thoughts on this game, so I want to hear your thoughts, what you put down in the notes. I want to hear it.
Yeah, so I honestly think this is one of the more interesting matchups this week. I mean, by no means am I saying that the Browns are going to win or even really keep this close, but the way I look at this is strength on strength here. I mean, you just saw what the Lions did to the Ravens. They ran the football with no issue. The question is, are they going to be able to do that against the Browns this week? The Browns, I don't think a running back has gone over 2 yards per carry yet against them. I mean, Josh Jacobs had 16 carries for 30 yards. Derrick Henry had 11 for 23. So it's been the best run defense in football. I think it's the best defense overall in football. So yeah, this is strength on strength here. I kind of want to hear your perspective from an outsider looking in. Do you think that the Lions are going to be able to replicate that kind of success? I know they're at home and everything, where their offense is historically much better, especially in recent years. But yeah, I'd like to know what you think.
So later on, we're gonna do our locks for the week, picks and stuff. But I was going through the lines. I saw the Lions were 9.5. I actually might like the Browns because of their defense to potentially cover or not the 9.5. It really just depends on if it's. I mean, if it's 10, it hooks over, whatever. But I think the Browns have a chance to keep this within 2 scores, which I don't think would be awful.
No,
It's going to
no.
depend on how they can ball control against that Lions defense and how the Browns are able to protect the pass unit, and namely Joe Flacco, against a Lions defense that just had, I believe, 7 sacks last week against one of the most insane athletes we've ever seen in the National Football League. So, with a much more immobile Joe Flacco, that could be scary. So, we'll see what happens, but I think it is very much strength on strength. It's going to be who wins the trenches, and that might be the winner of the game, to be honest, because that's where both of these teams are best suited to kind of assert their dominance in a lot of their matchups. Is that O line, that D line, and that's for both teams. So, like you said, comes down to whether Browns can do football. I agree with that, and then keeping that defense on the field. Even if they're not scoring, they got to find a way to sustain drives, get that defense a breather, and then that way they can go out there and once again wreak havoc. But if they go 3-and-out, like you were mentioning a little bit earlier, they don't stand a chance next week.
Yeah, I could see a lot of this kind of being like the Ravens game in week 2, where I think it was 13-3 at halftime, but then everything just unraveled in the second half. Joe Flacco had a fumble that the Ravens returned for a touchdown. The Ravens blocked a punt that set up an easy goal line touchdown. So I could see something kind of like that happening. But yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. And I had said earlier in the video, back in 2024, the issue with the Browns was that the defense would force a 3-and-out, but then the offense would do the exact same. So the defense would be back on the field in a minute and a half, and after it just wears down on you, especially when you're going against offenses of the caliber of the Lions. So Yeah, the offense is going to have to try and move the football, obviously, and they did a little bit of a better job last week in the second half. I thought, but I mean the problem with the Browns is there's just no downfield threat. They have Isaiah Bond, who's supposed to be a big play guy with game breaking speed, but the O line has been banged up. Jack Conklin was out. Dewan Jones is out for the year. So last week they were with two backup tackles. I think Conklin is expected to give it a go this week, which would be huge. But yeah, I mean you're going to need it when you're going against Aiden Hutchinson in a defense as ferocious as the Lions is. So yeah, I think it's going to be awfully tough. And there's been some talk in the Cleveland media this week. If say it's 21-3 Lions at halftime, does Dylan Gabriel start the second half? I think it's a real conversation to be had.
Similar to how the Giants have struggled, and that might be a way to segue into that. Not much to talk about there. Red zone offense has been terrible. They're going to go to Jackson Dart,
Mm-hmm.
try to invigorate some life in their offense. It could be very similar for the Browns in that point because offense is sputtering a lot, getting in the red zone. Not necessarily struggling to score in the red zone, but it's difficult to move the ball in the red zone and put up points. I mean, so we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But I wouldn't really hate on the Browns for doing that either because, to be honest, the offense looks kind of, as Drew Brees would describe the Eagles' offense, vanilla or boring. It's kind of similar.
Mm-hmm.
There's no big plays happening, nothing. So I feel like a QB change could help spark some of that, which is why the Giants are doing that with Jackson Dart. And yes, Browns defense will be tired if the Lions just go band for band every single possession with them and the offense does nothing. The conversation around the Eagles, frankly, for me, has been tiring. But Jerry Jones is probably tired of hearing about Micah Parsons, and this isn't the end of it because there was some stuff that emerged about possible tribute video for Micah this week. Green Bay going to Dallas, big game on Sunday Night Football. And Jerry kind of said he didn't feel it was appropriate to give Micah a tribute video. So I want to hear your thoughts because he could deserve it. He also could not. And then we'll talk about whether Dak would, under some of the circumstances that you might discuss as well.
Yeah, so I think this is actually one of the rare occasions where I'm going to agree with Jerry Jones here. I don't think Micah Parsons does. I think it's for a number of reasons. I mean, one, he was only there, what, 4 or 5 years. So it's not like you had mentioned Dak. This is kind of where the conversation stemmed from. Dak has been there double the time that Micah has. And so I think Dak would be much more likely to warrant one. But yeah, Micah Parsons, I mean, he's only there 4 or 5 years. We were talking before we started recording, and you brought up a lot of the personal accolades that Micah has, and what he's on track to do. And yeah, it's absolutely remarkable. But from a team perspective, what did you win? The Cowboys, didn't win anything. So it would be tough, even if they had made like an NFC Championship, or if they would have just had much more team success under him, maybe. But they also just traded him a month ago. I mean, not even. So I think it's the trade is still a little too fresh and a little too young to truly warrant a video. But even if it was, the beginning of the offseason, I still don't think it would because if you give Micah Parsons a video, then you're pretty much giving a tribute video. You have to give a tribute video to every good player that has played for your franchise, but that has gone to another team.
Yeah, I was going to double check when Dak got drafted. It was 2016. That's what I thought. But it's been
Mm-hmm.
double Dak. And in some similarities, how there wasn't enough winning involved and stuff. Mike, I think there would be some reason for Dak to not give a tribute video because in a lot of big games in the postseason, the losses are frankly on Dak and the passing offense to
Mm-hmm.
be outside of that massacre that the Packers put on display against the Cowboys just 2 years ago in the playoffs. So I hate doing this, but I'm gonna probably agree with Jerry Jones here, despite the fact that is one of like five players in NFL history to ever amass the amount of sacks that he has in his first 4 years. So he has been a generational talent for them, and in a lot of ways, Jerry tried to play it off as the Herschel Walker logic when they traded him way back in the day, got all those picks. It's not the same because you got a former All-Pro defensive tackle back with a couple of things, but yeah, I don't think Micah will get one. I really don't think, we should continue to talk about Micah because it's done. The deed's been done. It's happened. They've all moved on. Jerry was happy with what he got. Micah's obviously in a great situation in Green Bay next to Rashawn Gary, who,
Oh,
by the way,
oh yeah,
26 sacks, probably because of Micah Parsons. So their defensive
yeah.
line will probably also wreak havoc on a Cowboys team still trying to find a way after a gut wrenching loss by 17 points to the Bears in frankly shocking fashion.
Yeah, from that game specifically, I was really impressed with Caleb Williams. I think that was the most comfortable he had looked in the season so far. But this Cowboys defense is really bad. I mean, they made Russell Wilson look like Tom Brady. I mean, Russell Wilson threw for like 450 yards. We talked about it in our video last week. Just how good Russell Wilson looked. We were both shocked. But then you saw how bad Russell Wilson looked at home against the Chiefs. So it was just two completely different players. And then even Caleb, kind of struggled in week one against the Vikings. He had a really good first drive, and then the Vikings kind of adjusted to him. And he put up 21 points in the Lions, but it didn't matter. So, I mean, this past week, he looked like a much different quarterback. I mean, he just looked much more comfortable, but guys were also running wide open down the field. So, this Cowboys defense is I don't even really know how to put it. They're just bad. Like, they can't get stops. They're going to give up probably 28 plus points to any team they play. I mean, I think this is the perfect game for the Packers to really try and get back on track, offensively at least.
I would agree with that. It's a big game. It's on Sunday Night Football. All eyes are going to be there. I think the Packers will come ready to play. They similarly to how the Eagles have the Rams number. Packers have always had the Cowboys number. I will never forget the infamous Aaron Rodgers comeback, throw down the sideline, toe tapping,
Oh yeah,
Mason Crosby walk off field goal. And that was a gut wrenching loss for the Cowboys as well in the playoffs. So there's been a lot of moments between those two teams, a lot of one sided. And ironically, we're going to get to my favorite topic because this has been very one sided lately. I have so much to say with not enough time about the Cleveland Guardians dismantling the Tigers, not just of late, but frankly, not not all season either. But the last two series that they have played this last 2 weeks, and frankly, what the guards have been doing over the last month, it's absurd. I know you've got a lot of thoughts on it. Just the pitching, the hitting, their execution, and also the fact that, you know, I hate this as a Tigers fan. We seem to not get this leech off our back, okay, which is the guards, and we can't just get away from that because the Tigers have now forced themselves into a situation where they're probably not going to win the division. And in addition to that, they got to go back to Cleveland and play the same team they just played in the postseason last year in a series. I still think to this day they should have won, and they had their opportunities and blew it. So the floor is yours.
so we'll start by saying this: the game just got over. The Tigers beat the Guardians 4-2. So now the division standings, it is tied, but the Guardians own the tiebreaker. So the Guardians are technically in first. If the season ended today, they would win the division, but they are tied with 3 games left to go in the season. But I mean, I think a lot of people are kind of catching on to just how impressive this has been. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, it's impressive, but I think it's more just improbable. I mean, the Guardians at one point were 15 and a half games back, and I'm sure you could attest to this as a Tigers fan. You probably thought you were comfortable. You probably thought that the Guardians were put away. You were more worried about the Royals than anything because there was a point where the Royals were ahead of the Guardians. But then this past month and a half has just been literally unreal. I mean, before today, they had won 19 of their last 21. So now 19 of their last 22. They had won 5 straight going into today, which honestly, this was a big win for the Tigers. They really needed this. I think just to kind of get over the mental hurdle of having to play the Guardians and whatnot. But I mean, you can see my Guardian shirt. We had beaten Scooble twice in 5 days. How many teams can say that? So
No,
I mean, but all of this is impressive. But like they literally had to do this. There was no room for error. Like if they didn't do this, they wouldn't be in this position. Like you say, all of these numbers are crazy, and they're tied. Like I know they have the tiebreaker now because they had one, but I mean there's so many things that we can point to. It's honestly it hasn't even been Jose Ramirez. I mean a lot of Cleveland media has been talking about just how good Jose Ramirez is, and is he the the greatest Guardians player of all time, Indians player of all time? First of all, I say yes. but it hasn't even really been him. It's not like you're counting on him and only him. Bo Naylor has pitched in, but the pitching staff has been phenomenal. Stephen Vogt, the decision to go to the 6-man rotation about a month and a half, 2 months ago, has been phenomenal. I mean, the Guardians pitching has I think, a slightly over a 2 ERA in the month of September. I think that's a huge testament to pitching coach Carl Willis. Again, Trey, I said before we had recorded, Carl Willis, I think, is the best in the business. I mean, the Guardians give him anybody with a sliver of talent, and he is certainly going to squeeze the absolute most out of it. Slade Sassoni, they had traded for him in the offseason for Josh Naylor. Josh Naylor was a fan favorite here in Cleveland. He traded for a guy with a 5 ERA. You bring him in, he's one of your more reliable starters. You think your all-star closer, Emmanuel Clase, gone in the middle of the season for a gambling investigation. Luis Ortiz, one of the young guys that you traded for in the offseason. You gave up assets for him, a guy who was a big part of your rotation, showed some promise, gone for a gambling investigation. So that's two huge pieces to your pitching staff that are just gone. So that means Cade Smith has to move into a closer role. You got to bring up a guy like Joey Cantillo, move him into a starter role. And they've done perfectly fine. It's honestly, it's been incredible. It's been so much fun to watch from my perspective. But now I want to get your perspective. I'm sure you're feeling all of the exact opposites of what I'm feeling.
I am. I'm not going to address the offseason woes and trade deadline woes the Tigers have made across multiple seasons now. We talked about that pre-recording. We'll save that for the end of season MLB recap because that's going to be inevitable. Ironically for the Tigers, still have a plus 68 run differential. It used to be a lot higher, of course. 2-8 in the last 10. They also are in a 2-14 stretch. So the Guards had to literally, I saw a tweet about this like when the Tigers were still up about 10 games. The Guards would have had to go like 16-5, and we basically had to lose out. And ironically, not only did that happen, the Guards actually played better than they needed to in the stretch. So it's amazing what the Guards are doing, but it shouldn't have mattered. It should have mattered in terms of getting them into the wild card, which is what they weren't time. Because if the Tigers had just kept 500 pace like they have since the All-Star break, they haven't even looked like a contending team for almost 3 months now, they would still be up like 6 games in the division right now. And if you literally lost all those other games and just won the games against the Guards, guess what? You would have the tiebreak. I have so many just, I was telling you this, I've never seen a team have 9 bats, 7 that are consistently in the lineup that just all go cold at the same time for a month. It's
Yeah.
been so frustrating to watch. I have no words. The Guards are still fraudulent because, ironically, and I'm partially joking when I say this, they're leading the division with a negative run differential, like the Guards
Yeah.
always do. And the
Yeah.
Royals 79 with a +1 run differential. And yes, there was a time I was more concerned about the Kansas City Royals, and I know exactly the time you're talking about, and
Yeah.
I agree. Tigers had a series with the Royals. They came out of there 2-1, so I was feeling a little bit more confident. And ever since that point, I just, oh man, so many thoughts. So many thoughts. And because Skubal, with the way his starts are, they pushed him up 4 days rest to play against the Guards yesterday. He's slated to more than likely again pitch on 4 days rest in the last game of the season against the Red Sox in what could be a do or die game for them. Red Sox aren't in the playoffs yet either. They're leading the wild card for that inevitable, I think, second wild card spot behind the Yankees. So Yankees +4.5. They've already clinched. Red Sox are +1.5. Then the Tigers, who somehow, some way, have had the grace of the Houston Astros to still be in the playoffs because they also have the tiebreak on the Astros, and the Astros have to somehow win a whole nother game more than the Tigers in this stretch. It might be 2 games actually. So yeah, because of that tiebreak, Tigers still have a 70% chance at the postseason. Astros have just a 36.6% chance. But I don't think it really matters. The Tigers are gonna play the Guards again. I don't have any confidence they're gonna take 2 from the Red Sox. So they're probably gonna play again in the postseason. And I don't believe Skubal will be available to pitch because if they need to win the last game to get in, they're gonna pitch him that last game.
Yeah.
So it will be it won't be a repeat of what the Tigers did on the road against Houston in the wild card. last season. I don't see that happening unless Scooble, of course, were to miraculously pitch. Tigers have already taken care of business. They fared decent against the Red Sox. The infamous Javi Baez walk-off came against the Red Sox. So maybe this win sparks the offense a little bit. I don't know. It's been weird. There's been some games they've been scoring a ton of runs on this losing stretch, but the pitching has just let them down. The Yankees series, 2 games with 10 or more runs, and ever since that series, the offense has just died. Frankly, I mean, it is what it is. Jack Flaherty's been he's been nothing like he was last year. He's pitched phenomenally against all playoff teams and terribly against all non-playoff teams. I don't get it. Casey Mize had that great start to the season. Post All Star, his numbers have kind of dipped a little bit. Um, his stuff isn't stuffing. He was supposed to be a big K guy. Obviously, the injuries not really the same, but despite that, we'll see. The Red Sox are currently losing 6-1 to the Blue Jays in the bottom of the seventh, who we will talk about at some point because the Blue Jays have been very much under the radar, more than even the Brewers, in my opinion. Um, so we'll see. The Tigers are going to be about a game or half a game back against Boston for wildcard spot number 2, heading into this next series, which is the final series of the season. And if we were to somehow miraculously take 2, we'll be playing the Yankees, who I think we match up very well with because of our pitching. And the unfortunate thing would be that we're playing in their Mickey Mouse Stadium. And for context, it is Mickey Mouse. For any Yankees fans watching, you could hit a fly ball to right field in Fenway Park where the Red Sox play,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a home run in the third deck in Yankee Stadium. So yes, it is a Mickey Mouse field. Great for them. Good for them. But I think they need to renovate their stadium at this point because it is what it is. Cal Raleigh will probably win MVP. I know we're not talking about that, but I think Cal Raleigh should win the AL MVP award. It's almost never that a catcher has 60 home runs. So if he can get another 2, he'll tie Aaron Judge's AL record for home runs in a season. So I think the way it's trending, they're about even right now. We'll see how the final stretch goes. I know the Astros have been struggling as well, 4-6 in the last 10. They had just lost a couple games to the Athletics of all teams, and they got swept by the Mariners. I almost said the wrong team twice. So we'll see. Their final series against the Angels. So if the Tigers can't take care of business, they're not going to be in the playoffs because I mean, if they lose out, Astros win out, there's a slim possibility that that would even be a possibility for the Tigers. But they have to win one more than Houston does. So take care of business, Tigers. You should have already taken care of it. Should be at like 95 wins. You're at 86. I'm pretty disappointed. From the Tigers had a 0.1% playoff probability last season before they went on their miraculous run, and then this year they had a 0.1% chance at the same time, almost in September, to miss the playoffs. And here we are, and it's going to be a 30 for 30 one day. I cannot wait. From gritty Tigers to expletive Tigers. I'm not going to say that, but I don't know. I've literally never seen anything like it. I've been following baseball very avidly for about 10 years now. Um, and the fandom's grown with each season, getting more familiar with prospects and everything. Like, I never thought I'd be a huge baseball fan, but I happen to be now. And, well, the team that I've been rooting for has been, frankly, pathetic in my time as a fan. And they're finally good. And once there's finally expectations, they want to just make their bed a complete mess, and now they got to make that bed. So we'll see. I could go on for days, but I'm not going to. We're gonna move to a happier topic before I lose my mind. Picks for the week, and we can get this in within 11 minutes. That'll keep us at our hour mark. So here we go. I want to hear your picks, and then I'll do mine.
Yeah, so I've got three this week. So first up, Washington plus 7.5 hosting Ohio State. Now, both of us here, Ohio State fans, I just think this is a really good spot for Washington. I think Washington's being really underrated. I saw Joel Klatt said they didn't receive a single AP poll. First of all, that just shows how big of a joke the AP poll is. That is unreal. look, this is a good Washington team. When Ohio State's schedule came out, I had said I can spot two trap games at Washington, at Illinois. Now I know Illinois just got stomped on by Indiana, but look, these Big Ten cross country matchups typically favor the home team. They just have. You saw USC beat up on Michigan State last week. We'll see what happens with Oregon Penn State this week at Penn State. But yeah, Damon Williams I think is a really good quarterback. He's really ultra talented. This is Julian Sain's first road start, so I think that's a big question mark. I think this it's just too many points. I think this is just too big of a spread. So I like Washington to keep it within a touchdown here. My second pick, I like Texans minus 7.5 against the Titans. Now this is more of just a narrative pick and kind of fading the Titans. Brian Callahan's seat is it could not be hotter. I mean, his pants are on fire right now. But this Texans team is probably at the lowest that they've been. I think this number is really telling. I think the Texans can bounce back. I would expect a big game out of Nico Collins. I'd expect C.J. Stroud to kind of go back to what we saw from him, like even last year and 2 years ago. So I like the Texans to beat up on the Titans. And then lastly, give me Ole Miss minus 2.5 over LSU. I know a lot of people like this LSU team. I do too. I think they're really good on defense, but they beat Florida by 10 points at home. DJ Lagway threw 5 interceptions. If somebody throws 5 interceptions to you at home and you only win by 10, I'm certainly gonna sound the alarm. So I know Ole Miss is starting their backup quarterback, but this guy's good. So he's no Austin Simmons, but Ole Miss can certainly put up points. I like them at home, so I'll take Ole Miss to win by field goal.
My thoughts real quick before I get into mine. We agree on the Washington thing. I wasn't going to put it on there because you could do all the talking, but yes, I like Washington. I had them as a sleeper in the Big Ten as well. Not
Yeah.
necessarily to get the Big Ten championship game, but win 8-9 games, be a surprise team. I know their win total for the year was at 7.5, about 2 weeks before the season started. So I definitely think that is over for them if they can take one of the or even two of the big games they have. They have to play Ohio State, Illinois, Oregon as well, and then they might have to also play Penn State. I'll have to look, but they got a tough schedule. They got a tough draw, but I think they're a team that can compete against all those teams. As for
Mm-hmm.
the thing, I actually went Titans plus 7.5, so I'll just say that pick now. I kind of mentioned this previously. The totals only sit at 30.5. If we're doing math, like obviously this isn't really the way to do this, but
Mm-hmm.
it's trending towards low scoring game. Okay, it's going to be harder to cover the 7.5 in a 20-17 game or something. So I like the Titans to keep it low scoring. They have a good defense. They have a very good secondary. I don't think they're going to stop Nico Collins. I think they're going to keep him in check though, and it's going to come down to how that front gets pressure on an abysmal Texans O line. I could get a blitz in on that O line. So we'll see. As for Ole Miss, I'm not going to counter with I don't I don't hate the pick. I'm not high on LSU at this point, but I'm also uncertain on Ole Miss. They haven't had Austin Simmons for a couple weeks now. Their schedule has been indicative of the fact that their defense is suspect. I mean, Kentucky they won by 7. Kentucky is the bottom 2 team in the SEC this year. The Arkansas game I thought was a trap game for them, and the Arkansas spread I thought was free at the time. They only won that game 41-35. So um, I think Arkansas is pretty solid. I know they got Notre Dame at home, but I think Ole Miss, if they were on the more legit side than pretender side or a cutie, I think they would win that game more definitively. Trinidad Chambliss, the backup you're talking about, D2 Player of the Year for a couple of years. He has transformed this Ole Miss offense. Numbers almost identical to Austin Simmons, but he has done something Austin Simmons has not, and that is protect the football. So I actually think he's elevated their offense in a lot of ways, and I think it's going to be curious to see who starts moving forward. I know Chambliss is a senior, Austin Simmons obviously is not. So it might make sense to, ride the wave. I know we talk about this in the NFL when the backup comes in. The same thing. Same thing applies in college. And Ferris State is one of the top Division II programs, if not the top in that level of college football. And Chambliss has kept the production up for them. For my picks, I like TCU plus 3.5. They are ranked now. They're traveling to Arizona State. It's not a crazy trip in terms of road travel. And I think TCU is frankly just a better team. I think they should cover the 3.5. I think they probably should win the game too. But we'll go 3.5. Josh Hoover's a top 10 quarterback in the country as well. Florida State, most absurd line in the week, in my opinion. Six and a
Yeah,
half against
I like this a lot. Yeah, I like this a lot.
Virginia is, I don't know what they are. They got Chandler Morris in the portal from North Texas, who, by the way, was throwing the ever living air raid out of the football. Now at Virginia, they kind of dialed that back a little bit, but when they're down, Chandler Morris can throw them back in the game. So I think Florida State wins this one by potentially 3 scores on the road against Virginia. I also like this one equivalently as much. I should say equally as much, but Titans, not Titans, Tennessee, the Volunteers. I have them back to back, so I like the whole just concept of Tennessee this week. But I like the Volunteers to cover 7.5 at Mississippi State again going into the year. Mississippi State we thought would be a bottom 2 team in the SEC. They've actually already won all their games, so they're surprising people. They've got a quality quarterback. The atmosphere, it can do its thing. When they were number one way back when they played Alabama in the first ever college football playoff era season, the atmosphere is legit. So we'll see what happens, but Tennessee's going to score a ton of points, and I think the Mississippi State offense is going to just run out of gas. I already mentioned the Titans 7.5. I like it for all the wrong reasons, but I like it. I do not like the Titans, but I do like the spread. I think the Niners will take care of business against the Jags as well. I think 3.5
hmm
is favorable for Jacksonville, who lost to Jake Browning for about 2.5 quarters.
hmm
And I mean, they've been steady. They're getting decent run production. They have not used their number 2 overall pick at all, which is a whole nother thing because why draft a guy number 2 to barely play him on offense and barely play him on defense? It doesn't really make sense to me. And trade up for the pick as well. And
Gave up a haul for him. Yeah.
yeah, and I know Mac Jones isn't great. Brock Purdy is questionable. We don't know if he's going to play. So I'm kind of taking this under the assumption he could. But even despite that, the Niners have enough weapons potentially, and their defense has improved to the point where I think they can force the always overrated Trevor Lawrence, as I've said many times, to turn the ball over. So I think being at home as well, having a more sustainable special teams unit as well with Eddie Pinheiro back there, fourth highest kick percentage accuracy in terms of field goals in NFL history, by the way. So I like the odds there. And then give me the Bears as a road underdog traveling to Las Vegas to play the Raiders. I like the Bears straight up here. I think they're going to carry that momentum from last week against a better Dallas team than this Raiders team into this week. And as long as they can limit the run game with Ashton Jonty, I think the Bears will easily take care of business here. Geno's very turnover prone, and the Bears have a quality enough offense and defense, I think, to win this one straight up. So those are my picks. Let me hear the thoughts, but I'm liking this slate here. I'm liking this slate here a lot.
Yeah, I like the Florida State pick a ton. San Fran, not bad. San Fran just they've played a lot of close games, but I do like how Mac Jones has looked. I think Kyle Shanahan can win with anybody at quarterback, but yeah, I think the Bears are an interesting one there. Obviously, a bit of a road trip. Caleb Williams is always just kind of a question mark, but I think you've got the better defense here. I think you've got the better coach. And I think you got the better quarterback as well. Like you said, Geno Smith just kind of turnover prone, just a little too risky there. They want to play through Ashton Genty, but that O line just isn't going to allow them. So yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with all your picks besides the Titans.
I guess we'll see. That game won't be fun to watch either way. So whoever wins, good. If I mean, whatever. But that's going to conclude episode 2 of Beyond the Box Score. I'm Treyvon Hastings. With me, Joey Korzanowski. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And if you ever have thoughts or suggestions or topics that you want us to discuss, we post this on YouTube, we post it on Spotify, we post it on Instagram, all over. Just shoot us a message, shoot it in a comment section. We'll get to it, and we'll make sure to discuss it on the following week's episodes. But outside of that, we want to thank everybody for listening. Have a good night, rest of your weekend. Have fun with college football, NFL action. and the MLB playoffs coming around the corner. That is it. That is a wrap. We'll see you guys.